Bitcoin would probably be 55, 60,000 if Harris was elected. It would have never gotten to the 108 level. I think that his policies are hurting the overall stock market. I think the people are now pricing in a mild to maybe more than mild recession. If you said to me, net, will the team that Trump put in place from a regulatory perspective and from a potentially legislative perspective be beneficial to Bitcoin and the blockchain? I believe they will be.
Bitcoin, blockchain, and the future of finance. What does Anthony Scaramucci think about where we're headed next? In this video, we break down his unfiltered insights on Bitcoin's role in a shifting political and economic landscape. From regulatory shakeups to Trump's impact on the crypto market, Scaramucci holds nothing back. Is Bitcoin truly a hedge against uncertainty, or is it still a high-risk asset navigating volatile waters? Stick around as we dive deep into the key takeaways and what they mean for investors like you. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth crypto analysis, and turn on notifications so you never miss a market-moving insight. Now, let's get into it.
Bitcoin would probably be 55, 60,000 if Harris was elected. It would have never gotten to the 108 level. You would have been fighting with them over things like Saab 121. You would have been fighting with them over various things. Elizabeth Warren would still be empowered. She's been effectively neutered by Donald Trump. And so that's a real positive for the industry. I think the choke point issue, the choke point 2.0 issue, I think is also a big one. I think that is going to get resolved during Trump's time in office, which I think is beneficial. And so there are positives. But let me just talk a few negatives, if you don't mind. Okay, the negative number one for me is don't underestimate the introduction of the Trump and Melania meme coins having a negative effect on the industry, having a negative effect on the imagery around meme coins. And, you know, there are reasons why we've sold off. The hack is one of the big reasons, but also this proliferation of meme coins has soured retail investors and has put a lot of junk in the marketplace. And so on the edge, the differential price has gone down because of this stuff. Trump is a contributor to that. His friends won't want me to say that, but he is. Moreover, he took $500 million out for himself a few days before the inauguration. That's not normal. That's not normal for people that we're bestowing that office on to do to the American people. He's normalized it, Scott, but it's not normal. And remember that you've got people in Washington that are even older than me. I'm a fossil now in the industry, but Chuck Grassley's 600 years old. Nancy Pelosi's 400.
They don't have your hair, though. They don't have your hair.
No, I still have my hair, thank God. But the point I'm making is you've got 60, 70, 80, and even 90-year-olds making regulatory decisions and going to put their names up against a vote related to stablecoin legislation, blockchain legislation, Bitcoin related. And the Trump meme coin doesn't help us win that argument. Okay, so you have the positives and you have the negatives, and I'll end with the positive. The Democrats have had the living shit scared out of them. They had $250 million deployed into the marketplace, $40 million into the Sherrod Brown race. They knocked a 18-year veteran out of the Senate, and thankfully they did that because he was so negative on crypto. And I think the Democrats are like, whoa. We can't be that anti-crypto, and I think you'll end up definitionally getting a piece of stablecoin legislation, clarity on banking, clarity on custody. And so these are positives. But listen, if you're going to tariff the American consumer, which Trump says he's going to do, and you know he tells people that Ukraine started the war and Russia, I guess, didn't invade Ukraine, and he's got his minions saying that. And he's telling people that the tariffs are paid for by the countries, which it's not. They're paid for at the port by the American consumer. And what we know, and if you don't believe me, let's go with one of the richest people I know, Steve Cohen from Point 72, macro investor, multi-billionaire, owner of the New York Mets, one of the smartest minds in our industry, he's telling people last week tariffs are a regressive tax, and they eat into the disposable income of the poor, and they create a vicious cycle which could potentially lead to a recession. So that's not good for Bitcoin. It's not good for the blockchain for us to go into a recession right now. So to me, you got this stuff going on contemporaneous with everything else. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. But I think that, we tried. I mean, Scott, you were there. I went to Washington, met with Anita Dunn, was in the White House with these people, with Mark Cuban, begging them to go a little less hard at the industry, begging them to be a little bit more enlightened about the industry, and they wouldn't listen. And so now Donald Trump won. And again, it wasn't just that. It was the inflation. It was the lack of intergenerational transfer of leadership by the Democrats, a failed narrative. Harris was going up against the most famous person in the world at the time of the election. And there's a lot of angst in the country. There's angst about the border, angst about inflation, angst about the economy. And he won the popular vote. So, we're here now. I get it. But I am worried. I'm not going to say that I'm not worried. And I was with Tom Lee yesterday, and I got people upset with me because I'm telling them this is what happens when you put tariffs on. And by the way, Glass-Steagall exacerbated the recession that led into a depression in the 1929 to 1934 period of time.
Steve Cohen's not the only person who's been critical of tariffs. Kind of famously, Ken Griffin, I just brought up the quote. From my vantage point, the bombastic rhetoric, the damage has already been done, and it's a huge mistake to resort to this form of rhetoric when you're trying to drive a bargain because it sears into the minds of CEOs and policymakers that, yes, such and such. But obviously we have quite a few of the biggest names, smartest, most respected people on Wall Street saying that this is a poor strategy. So I guess, do we think that him approaching the rest of the world in this manner with tariffs has been part of the reason for this sort of drawdown in crypto? I also point to the Trump token. I want to dig more deeply into that. But in context of the macro, do we think that his economic policies could actually end up being bad for crypto, even though he's obviously pro-crypto and we could see legislation and pro-crypto regulators? Obviously, we've seen that already. So how do we find the balance there? Which one is going to carry more weight?
So I think that his policies are hurting the overall stock market. I think the people are now pricing in a mild to maybe more than mild recession. I love Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. Just wrote a book about Bitcoin. I don't see Bitcoin as a store of value at this moment. I think it can become a store of value as it's adopted by the world's citizens. And it's at a 6-7% adoption rate right now. So it's still very nascent. Bitcoin is still, and people get mad at me, but I'll just tell you what I think. It's still a risk asset. It's still a technology that needs to be more fully understood by its critics. And it's still something that is going to be extremely volatile. And I would compare it to Web 1 stocks like Amazon, which experienced 50, 60% moves up or down over long periods of time before it eventually seasoned and became part of the foundational structure of the S&P 500, where now it has the same beta of the overall stock market. But in the beginning, it didn't. And so Bitcoin's there. And so risk off for Bitcoin, plus a hack in the system at Bybit, plus concerns about meme coins and the exhaustion of the gambling of that's taken place in retail. And you've created a 20-ish%, 25% correction in Bitcoin and a 40 to 60% correction in other coins. Let's call them altcoins. And the big daddy, Ethereum, and the second big daddy, Solana, they've been smacked around hard here as a result of all this. But again, if you said to me, net, will the team that Trump put in place from a regulatory perspective and from a potentially legislative perspective be beneficial to Bitcoin and the blockchain? I believe they will be. But up against that, if you're going to fight with your allies and you're going to put misinformation out in the marketplace from the White House that the Ukrainians started the war, and you're going to vote with the Chinese and you're going to vote with the Russians at the UN against your allies, I think it's very naive to think that you haven't raised the risk premium and you haven't raised the level of unpredictability in the marketplace. So let me just say this to you, and I think you get this. I'm 36 years doing this. Markets like stability, they like predictability, they like governments that are in the background. Okay, they don't like governments that are gnashing their teeth all day. It just creates too much stress. Donald Trump is having a press briefing almost every day in the Oval Office. He's got lights, cameras, microphones. He's running the presidency like a reality show. And what do you get in reality shows? You get conflict. And so Trump had a 15-year reality show, very well rated. Reality shows, bang, boom, smash, let's have some conflict. And so Trump's trying to create that. It draws people's attention. He's taken in 35 days just over 1,000 questions from the press. I think in 4 years, Joe Biden took 150 questions. Now, he's spewing nonsense, but he's quote unquote accessible. But this is all part of the whole programming nature of it. You have to think about it as Trump does. He thinks about it as a programmer. I'm a programmer. What can I do to create potential conflict? What can I do to get people riled? Is that great for Bitcoin? No. What would be great for Bitcoin is a moderate politician who sees the future of this technology, sees the wonderful applications that this technology could yield in terms of cost savings, which could unleash economic innovation and lots of growth. It would be literally like a second peace dividend, if you will, for the world. $7 trillion globally per year is spent on transaction verification. That's your credit card fees, wire fees, your lawyers getting together to make sure that your documents are okay on a transfer of property, transfer of art. There's $7 trillion spent per year, and this would cut that. This would make that go into the economy the way the internet cut a lot of the friction in the economy, and it unleashed a lot of productivity gains. So look, I mean, moderate politician, not left or right, said what are the right or wrong things to do as opposed to left or right for Bitcoin and the blockchain, we would be way better off. But we're here now, we're here.